if you are unfamiliar with what Startup Grind is, it is a global organization meant to connect, educate, and inspire entrepreneurs. We do fireside chats and we do founders forums, which basically bring people together. Tonight we're doing a fireside chat interview with Olivia Weinstock, who we'll start talking to in a minute here. At first, I just want to also mention and say thank you to tonight's event sponsor, which is Dickinson Wright. If you are looking for legal help, if you're a startup and you need to figure out, your legal entity, if you're raising funds and you need to figure out contracts or you're doing big deals, check out Dickinson Wright. And my name is Lucas Latour. I am the host and the new co-director of Startup Grind Columbus. I do business development for AWH, and we are a software product development firm here in Columbus. So if anyone here needs help with that, feel free to hit me up in the chat afterwards. But I would just like to start out and welcome Olivia Weinstock to the event. If you guys want to just unmute yourselves and everyone give a quick round of applause. I know it's awkward, but yay. Welcome, Olivia. So thank you so much for doing this, by the way, and taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So you have a really fascinating story. You are a founder and CEO at Tandem. And just to start out, would you mind just telling us a little bit about what Tandem is? And just start out with that.
Yeah, so Tandem is a completely free marketplace for care services. So we built a platform that connects families with childcare providers. And right now that includes babysitters, nannies, tutors, and now educators as well in the current climate with COVID. So we're a completely free platform, like I said, which means that our goal was to really knock down a lot of the barriers that exist in other similar platforms. So we don't have any fees or subscriptions, and providers receive 100% of their earnings as well. And we leave all of that communication and kind of decision-making in the process up to the pair. So we aren't involved in any of that, which was our goal as well.
Yeah, so it's super interesting because, we hear sort of free, like the free model, and that's something that is kind of hard to scale. So how do you kind of approach like revenue and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so at the beginning, we kind of knew we wanted it to be free. I saw a ton of the back and forth with finding someone reliable to care for your kids. One of the big friction points was the fee structure, and people wanted a reliable, suggestion for a provider without those barriers. So we thought about different ways to do that, and we knew it wasn't, ads or adding in a subscription to be able to fully use the model. We wanted it to be completely free and really comprehensive. So we came up with a background kind of revenue stream, which is we act as a bank for providers. So all of our providers are paid through the platform, and we are basically the mobile bank for their earnings.
That's wild. And I feel like, I don't know, I'm assuming there's other like marketplaces and things out there, but the advantage of this is really that it's free for the providers, right? And free for the people seeking the services, right?
Exactly.
And I just think that's a very creative way to think about this. And like, just to step back a bit and go back to really the beginning, another super interesting thing about you is you started entrepreneurship very early on, right? I can't remember. I think weren't you like 11 when you first started entrepreneurship?
11, yeah.
So everybody here can feel bad about themselves now. No, that's amazing. So how did you get started that early, and like what were you doing at 11 years old?
Yeah, no, I don't think it definitely wasn't, as a little kid, I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur or I want to create a startup at that age. It was kind of something that happened more naturally based on interest that still is involved with Tandem. So I loved kids and wanted to be a babysitter or, a childcare provider. but I was a little young. So something that I came up with at that age was to bring together a couple of my friends, and we started a backyard summer camp just for kids in our community. And this was something, like I said, that was kind of based on interest. We thought it was fun, and it ended up sticking around for the next, 10 years. And we kind of just grew within the community there, which led to a lot of, connections and insight into that industry.
And so for the summer camp, were you like the CEO of the summer camp? Did you have like people working for you and stuff? I know you said you had one friend that was helping you with it, or what was that like?
Yeah, so it was myself and around 5 of my friends, and we kind of all stuck through it, through end of elementary school, middle school, high school, and then first couple summers after college as well. And as we kind of moved forward, it did become more of a like, oh, these people are working for the camp. We came up with people who had gotten too old for the camp were then junior counselors, quote unquote. The camp grew significantly. So by the end of high school, we had around 100 kids coming each summer, which was, we needed more help than we did the first year when we had 12 kids. So we definitely did, employ other help, but we were basically, able to manage it as we grew. The camp grew as well, and our, responsibility as well.
I'm curious, when somebody starts that young, did you have like entrepreneurial influences, or how did you sort of start down that path?
Honestly, no, it wasn't one of those things where it was like, oh, this is a business. We need to, find these resources or take these classes or things like that. It all came naturally. So I think over time, when we were 10 or 11, we didn't use, for example, like Excel, or we didn't use a good booking platform to get people signed up for the camp. Over time, we were able to kind of pick up some of those things that I guess just came naturally as the camp grew. So the need for more administrative things and stuff like that was definitely necessary, as well as like communication skills.
And did you always know that you were going to be like an entrepreneur on some level then?
I don't think I necessarily did until I got to college and kind of realized like, wow, that was, a big deal, and that took a lot, and it was something that I was genuinely interested in. I think it was one of those things where I didn't realize it was something I could continue. To me, it was a backyard summer camp that got really popular, but on a really low scale. But when I went to college, I knew that because of that, I was interested in business, but wasn't sure kind of where that fit in.
Did you, when you got to college, did you ever think about, pulling like a Mark Zuckerberg and just like dropping out and going back into the startup realm? Or were you always kind of like going to finish? And
Yeah, I didn't, just because I hadn't started Tandem until last year. So it was never something where I didn't want to drop out so that I could start an idea that I didn't have yet almost. But when I did start Tandem, it became clear that I wasn't going to run Tandem and go to school as well.
yeah. Um, and so let's talk a little bit about how you started to develop the idea. Um, and it sounds like it's somewhat born out of the experience, maybe from the camp, or was it like a later realization that there was a need for something like this?
So it was both. I definitely had kind of a network of people I knew due to the camp. So it was people I babysat, but then I also realized that people were coming to me for like as a reference almost for other childcare providers. So I was receiving texts from families I knew, whether I was home or away. They were messaging me and saying, "Hey, I know you can't watch my kids, but do you know someone who can?" So it was a need that I definitely saw. I was a reliable reference for them and a source that they could come to get that suggestion. And I was seeing that they didn't really have somewhere else to go to where there weren't those barriers involved, and it was really word of mouth based. So I saw the need for something that was reliable and didn't have any fees attached either.
And I guess, like, how hard is it to find these kinds of services, like, without having something like Tandem in place? Like, what were some of the ways you noticed like the pain point?
Yeah, I think the services aren't hard to find, but they come at a cost, whether it's monetary or not. So you can find a service where you can get on a platform and be, connected with providers based on your needs, but you're going to pay for it, or you're going to have to abide by what the company sets as the rate, or you're going to have limited communication with the provider. So those were all things that I was seeing that they weren't getting when they were obviously just asking me for a word of mouth recommendation for another provider. And so that's kind of where I saw the need. Is like, if this was something that existed, I don't think people would be coming to me necessarily.
Gotcha. And for those of us that are unfamiliar, how long has Tandem been around and like launched?
Yeah, we started about a year ago. So I was manually, basically doing the whole process of Tandem back in August and for like about a month. And then we officially launched our first tech-based platform in January.
How has it gone so far? Like, is the product's out in the world now? What are you
Right.
seeing in terms of the users and like growth and stuff?
Yeah. So at first we tried to keep it really small. So we were focused actually on, instead of having a traditional beta market, we were like, let's just use the people who I had been in contact with and who I had been connecting beforehand and get valuable feedback. So we were in Bexley and only servicing people there from December to around May, June. So it was a while of, trying to keep it small. And then now we're kind of the opposite. Like, we're trying to really grow in Columbus and be present here and actually do marketing. So it was an interesting shift of, how much can we read into how much this is being used in Bexley versus now we are fully launched in Columbus and we want people coming to us. But people have been really receptive. We've seen the rate of retention is super high. Without that fee structure, people don't really have a need to leave the platform, which is really, really important.
Yeah. So for the platform itself, essentially, like if we were to sort of imagine it, is it sort of like almost like an Upwork or something, or how would you like kind of paint the picture for it? Is it more like a marketplace?
Yeah, it's more like a marketplace, but it's different than a traditional marketplace where there's no middleman, I would say. So we are still in the middle, kind of performing an algorithm on what comes in to us and then pushing it out to the providers. So another thing that was really important to me in creating this platform from a tech perspective was that not every provider, which is like the caregivers, are going to see every single job. So we wanted to set providers up in a way where they were most likely to apply or accept and then succeed at a job. So we're not showing high schoolers jobs that happen during the day, for example. So that was a really important thing. And the way it's set up as a result is that we are kind of in the middle. So we receive requests from the families and sort through them and then send them out to the providers who can then accept or decline. And once we've made that connection, the family and the provider can really openly communicate.
Gotcha. How as far as like the algorithms and that side of it go, how far along is it? Are you still doing sort of like behind the curtain type stuff where you're sorting these? And because I think maybe that's where it was like last time we talked, or that might not be right, but
I am. Yeah, I am. So it's interesting that, a year ago I was doing everything by hand, the entire process from vetting the sitters to talking to the parents, and the whole process was in my hands, and obviously it was a much lower scale, but over the past year it's been so cool to see piece by piece that completely been replaced with technology. And right now we're at a point where the system internally I'm able to filter and sort through the providers and then send in mass, but it's not doing it completely itself yet. So I am still in that part of the process.
so let me ask you this: like, you've got this tech platform and it's being built out, and you're at this point where you've got a team. And when did you start to think about like it as a tech platform? Did you have a team already behind it at that
Not at
point?
all. Not at all. I actually assumed that I needed someone at the beginning who was like me, who was super, invested in childcare and knew the market really well. that was my assumption. And that was something that I was quickly redirected away from. And I learned very quickly that the people I actually needed on board were co-founders who had a tech background.
Do you feel like founders have a tendency to want to do too much because it's like their baby, in a sense? No pun intended, because we're talking about babysitting.
Right.
But like, is that something you've ever thought about or struggled with, or is it pretty natural to you to just find partners to work with?
Yeah, I mean, my co-founders have been awesome and have been really good about completely understanding like what the need is, and not me going to them and saying like, this is what needs to be built and here's how to build it. I think they've really come to understand the user's needs, which is really nice. But there is a sense of that in a way because I am still very involved, and a lot of my job is customer service and receiving feedback and taking that to the tech team so that we can iterate on the product. So I think at first there was a little bit of that, just because I went from doing everything manually to then being like, you need to use the system how it should be used and not, go outside of it. So that's taken some getting used to, just because I was doing everything myself at first. But I think it definitely is something where I've realized in order to scale, we definitely need to put it in technology and not have me be involved.
How did you start to think about building out a team? Like, where did you look to find co-founders? Because I feel like this is a problem a lot of people run into, where you're like, hey, I got this great idea, but I want to find people that I can work with. It's like a long-term relationship. So I guess, how did you sort of find good people to partner with?
Yeah, I got really lucky. I think it was easier than what I've seen now in hiring engineers. Is a ton harder than it was to find my co-founders. So I was connected with Drive Capital, and they had someone on their tech team who actually wanted to chat with me about Tandem. And she decided to stop working at Drive and come and try it out with me, which was amazing. And she brought in one of her friends as well. And those were the first two co-founder options I met, and those are still my co-founders today.
That is wild. And now we should also mention, it's like there's been a private round, I guess, raised from Drive Capital. So you're working with Drive, right?
Yeah.
And I guess, like, what was your end? Did you first connect with Drive, or did you connect with the co-founders first? Like, how did you sort of develop the relationship?
Yeah, I was babysitting for one of the investors' kids at the time, and asked to just bounce some ideas off of him, and it spiraled really quickly. People, gained a lot of excitement around the idea, and through a couple more conversations, it kind of just happened naturally.
Nice. So for all those who are out there babysitting, make sure you bring your pitch deck, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's fascinating. So, I mean, how do you think, aside from like finding your co-founders, how do you think having a support network like Drive has helped with the company?
It's helped in every way you could think of. I think the main thing is having resources, and yeah, feeling like you have people who are almost an extension of your team internally has been really, really important for us, especially in us being young and having a lot of things that, we didn't have experience with. So having a team of people who can help with some of those things that I've never done. So financials and equity and the things you kind of don't think about when you're, wanting to build an app around babysitting and a payment structure and things like that. There's so many other things to think about that they've been really, really helpful with.
That's incredible. And just for the folks that aren't familiar, like, roughly how old are the founders / co-founders of the company?
Yeah, I'm 21 and my two co-founders are 22.
It's amazing. Again, early start. Do you ever, do you ever deal with sort of like, I think I started my first thing, I might have been like 22 when I started. Do you ever think about like, uh, you know, is this right for me? Or like, I feel like all of us have kind of gone through this a little bit with imposter syndrome and stuff.
Mhm.
Have you ever had experiences like that?
Totally. I think there's been so many times over the past year where I've been like, why am I fit for this role? And there will probably be so many times over the next few years when I feel like that. I think something that's been really important for me is reminding myself, why these people want to work with me and why these people invested in me and in Tandem. And the reason is not because I have experience in building a financial model on Excel. It's a lot more that I had an idea that I was really passionate about. And I think that's something really important to remember. I don't think all of those more, logistical experiences you've had are as important when you do have the passion behind the idea as well.
Mm. And I don't know if you, I kind of want to ask, like, do you have a sense of like what it like takes to be a founder generally? Like, I think a lot of people want to know, like, do you have to be like a superhero or whatever to start a company? I guess, what is your sense of like uh, the accessibility of being a founder?
Yeah, I think this is, another thing, and I'm obviously learning every day. I think I've learned more over the past year than I ever have. But I think some of the things that have been really important for me to focus on are definitely communication. That's a really big one in starting and continuing a company, growing it internally and externally. So having really strong communication skills where you feel like you can accurately represent your ideas and explain them well. Another thing is being really decisive. There's been a lot of times where you don't know if you're making the correct decision at all, and no one has ever created this company. So there's
Mm.
no correct way to go. It's kind of like you're making it up as you go along, and being able to make a decision has been a lot more important than doing tons of research and spending time wondering if it's the right decision. That's another big thing. Um, yeah, I would say just, being confident and being able to work quickly to fix problems, but also to strategize for the future as well.
Yeah, and just like kind of touching on like the future and that sort of stuff. Where do you see this going in like the next few years? Is this the next route?
I hope so. So we probably won't look the same at all in the next few years. We're really, which is funny because of my background, but using babysitting as a stepping stone to a ton of other industries. So right now we're obviously in only the childcare sector, but we see the platform really expanding on two sides. And thankfully, right now, the root of the platform is both of those sides, one being our debit card and banking system, and the other being childcare. So on the childcare side, the marketplace, we want to expand into any sort of hourly paid job. So almost a platform for gig economy workers to come and find jobs in whatever sector they're in. And then on the other side with debit cards, we want to expand into full mobile banking application. So right now, our providers can have instantaneous access to their money after they complete a job, and they can spend it right away like any other Visa card. But over time, we want them to be able to use those earnings comprehensively on our platform, the same place where they're finding their jobs.
And just for the listener and people here in attendance, it's so the banking aspect of it. I assume there's like an online bank where you store the payments, right, from the work that's done, and then you issue out like debit cards, right, and
Yeah.
people spend it. And I don't know, that's super fast. How do you decide to, or how do you become a bank? Like,
Yeah, that's a big question that we're still trying to answer as well. It's going to be a while until we're a bank
yeah.
legally, but I've learned that there's a lot of things you can do to mimic what a bank does and give that functionality to users without actually being a legal up and running bank, which is really hard to do. You need a lot of volume and a lot of money and a ton of time. So we right now are issuing our cards through a third party provider, and they are borrowing the licensing from a larger bank and then running these card issuance programs for companies like Tandem. So that's where we are now. And over time, we are just going to continue to iterate on that. And, with scale, hopefully improve the functionality to the point where we are a bank eventually.
Gotcha. So one thing I want to ask you about is just like over the last period of time, I can't remember how long you said it's been. It's been like you worked on it for a year and then you launched it in January, right? What happened like when COVID hit? Like how did that change the way you were thinking about the business at the time?
Right. So, like you said, I started this all last August, and then we launched in January, and then COVID hit in March. So it was a pretty quick turnaround. We had only the users who I had obtained through word of mouth in my community. So it was a pretty small user base, but it was also, the beginning of our testing with our app. So we were working on getting people converted from using the platform through Google Forms to using the platform through our app that we had just built. So it was almost overnight that every single job on our platform got canceled. So right away it was full, no usage. And we kind of assumed that for the next few months, we would have no users, no jobs, no one testing the platform, and we would just build like crazy, which wasn't a horrible option. But we kind of pivoted and decided, the people who needed to work and who needed childcare still were first responders. And so we did a fundraiser so that we could still pay babysitters to work for these first responders and allow the first responders to have completely free childcare. So we partnered with Ohio Health in doing that, which was awesome because we not only were able to get them free childcare and pay sitters, but still have people using the platform in a really crucial time of development.
Hmm. Did the platform like change at all from like the user feedback? Like were there any initial like things you thought like, oh, maybe it could be this way, and then like it changed over time?
Yeah, one of the biggest things I think that's hard for us is we need parents to pay through us.
Mm.
And getting people to trust a very new, very scrappy looking platform in connecting their payment information is really hard. So that was the biggest thing that we changed over the first few months. And it's probably gone through like 5 iterations of the way it looks and the way it feels and the way it works. But getting people to connect their payment information has been a lot harder than anticipated. So that was something that was probably shocking at first and was like, whoa, we need a different way of doing this.
Gotcha. What are some of like the big challenges that you foresee coming up with Tandem?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest things that we worry about, not necessarily have been challenges yet, but keeping people paying through us. That's our only source of revenue and the way that we're able to be free. And once people connect their payment information and are up and running on the platform and they see that we don't have any fees, they're only paying what they're paying their provider, everything's fine. But one of the biggest challenges for us is getting people to that place where they know that that's all they're paying. So one of the biggest challenges I see in the next few months, especially, is gaining trust in Columbus as we try to expand. We just brought on a growth marketer and we're really working on advertising. And I think building that trust is one of the biggest things for us just because of the industry we're in right now.
Gotcha. I guess for the community and how they can sort of support you on this journey, I assume there's, they can try the app, right? Are they able to sign up now?
Yeah, it's on the App Store.
It's on the App Store. And so what do they search on the App Store? It's just
you can search Tandem babysitting and it'll come up.
That's awesome. And what, as far as like your team and stuff, like how big is the team today?
So we have 9 employees, 7 of which are engineers.
Okay, awesome. Are you still like hiring and looking for people, or?
Yeah, so right now we're hiring for a full-time designer, and then we're also kind of on a rolling basis hiring full stack, preferably senior level engineers. So that's a big need of ours, is finding really great experienced engineers in Columbus. We need in-house employees, so that's a huge thing. And we're looking at probably 5 more engineers over the next few months.
Gotcha. And I'll make this sort of my last question, but for the folks that are on the call, think about it. We're going to do a little bit of Q&A quickly before Olivia has to go. But are you seeing, like, are you going to continue to raise and stuff as things go forward? Are you looking for more support in that area, or are you pretty hunkered down with what you have now?
So we have a pretty good runway for now. So we're not fundraising at this time, but in the future, that will definitely be a need in the future.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, I would like to open it up to the group on the call. We have a huge group today. So does anyone have any questions for Olivia? I'm looking around. You can feel free to hop in and unmute yourself. I see Akil. Did you hop in?
Yeah. Hey, Olivia. This is Akil here. I'm with Root Insurance and a Venture for America fellow or alum now as well. I'm kind of curious to know how you incentivize, I guess let's call them the babysitters, to basically only receive payments like via these debit cards. Because I guess like I'd kind of compare it to like with Venmo. Venmo allows you to like send money easily between friends, but I never keep my money in my Venmo only because like I kind of want the cash back. So I'm kind of curious to know how you incentivize the babysitters to kind of, I guess, keep their money within like the Tandem ecosystem.
Right. So that's something that we see, expanding over time as we add additional features. So as our platform kind of mimics a traditional banking app or even Venmo more and more, I think people will feel like they have no reason to transfer the money elsewhere. But that was also something that we were faced with from day one of launching the platform. We started by only allowing people to spend on their cards. So they essentially had to spend everything they were earning. And we got a lot of pushback from that from the start in people wanting to transfer to another bank account. So people are able to do so. They essentially receive a checking account and they can transfer the money in and out. People still do spend on their cards, but I think giving them the option to transfer if they need to is really important, especially for people on the platform who are working through Tandem for their full-time job.
Awesome.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Great question, Akil. Anyone else want to jump in?
I assume the babysitters need their parents to sign into this because they're generally minors.
So a larger percentage of our babysitters are over 18, but they do, when they sign up, if they're under 18, they do have to have their parent read and check off a box that, certifies that they're allowing them to be on the platform. But most of our sitters are college or above. Our, average age is 23.
Awesome. I'm looking around. I feel like we can get at least one more question.
Yeah, I have a question. This is Clara. I'm also from Root. Hey, Akil. Olivia, thanks for taking the time to do this. It was really interesting to hear a little bit more of your story. I'm curious, given the fact that you have Drive and other really great mentors around you, how you balance kind of like the temptation or the influence of that advice with your own internal guide for what you think is best, given the fact that you're the visionary behind the business.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was something from kind of day one, people almost warned me about of, there can sometimes be situations where you do feel like they're overstepping in making those decisions. But I haven't seen a ton of that, which has been super nice. I think the investors have really left a lot of the decisions up to us and given advice and let us take it or leave it. There have been like some situations where I have to kind of step back and say, they have this recommendation or think we should add this feature, but I am the one who's like living it day in and day out. So that 30-minute meeting a week isn't always exactly what I need to do. So I think it's definitely about balancing it and kind of going with your gut on what you think is the best next step.
All right, I know I said that was the last one, but I also want to ask this one, which came in through the chat, which is sort of how do you think about quality on the provider side, like from like background checks and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so all of our providers have to get a clean background check before they're able to sit on the back or sit on the platform. They do the background check through us, and they also have to have a reference check. So they enter a reference when they sign up, who can then send in a form about them filled out. It's a pretty quick process, which is really nice. People can kind of start seeing jobs pretty soon after signing up, since the vetting process isn't too long. And we also really rely on reviews. So anytime a family reviews a sitter, whether it's telling us that they weren't responsive and they want a new sitter, or telling us that they didn't show up, all of those things factor immediately into the provider's reviews and scores, which has been really important and will become more and more important as we get more data.
Awesome. All right, well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Well, thank you so much for coming. This was an amazing story. It was great to get to know you a little bit better. And I know that everyone here is rooting for you on your continued journey with Tandem. And I'm sure we all look forward to supporting you as you continue along the journey. So unmute yourselves, everybody. Give a quick round of applause. I see some hands clapping. Hey, awesome. What? I heard something. All right, sweet. Well, thanks everyone. And come out next time to Startup Grind. Again, up next we have Denzel Porteous, who is the CEO of Pride Fund One, and we're talking about getting access to capital for diverse founders, which will be next month. So, all right.